Hello and welcome to this week's QuickBooks Enterprise Deep Dive webinar. I am your host, Kat Roskovics, and today we're going to be going over Fourlane's Deletion Service. So in today's webinar, we're going to cover the following topics. So we're going to talk about why we developed this application, if it's right for you or your client, what a future state for this application looks like, and then we're actually going to see the tool in action. So first off, a little bit more about why. So we developed this application and the service where we're using it because we had clients that were coming to us that had large file sizes. So large file sizes for QuickBooks Enterprise, which is the majority of the clients that we have that we've used this tool for. We like to see those files around anywhere from a gig to a gig and a half is when we want to start taking some sort of an action to truncate data. Posting transactions definitely take up quite a bit of space in files, but so do non-posting transactions. And what I mean by non-posting transactions are estimates, sales orders, and purchase orders. So a sales order, once it's converted to an invoice, those products have been fulfilled. Now we have two transactions that are taking up the same amount of space in a file, but only one of those transactions is actually impacting our financials, so our profit and loss and our balance sheet. Some of the other services that we offer to help reduce file size can lead to significant downtime for clients potentially. There may be some pre or post work that's needed based on the type of service that we're recommending, which can even add to that downtime. So we wanted to develop something that would help clients that are in that situation. It's going to be a better client experience, right? So some of the other services that we offer can be pretty expensive and can also have significant downtime, which of course can cause disruption to their business as well. So it's another reason why we developed the service. The process is pretty easy. We schedule a brief kickoff to plan for when that service is going to be completed. Typically, we're running those over a weekend or in some cases over a holiday weekend. So we set up that brief kickoff to outline what dates are going to work best for the client, and we send a link so they can upload their file to us, and then we also schedule a file restore meeting. So a couple of identifiers. So you need to be in a QuickBooks desktop product. So whether that's Premier or, like I said, most of the clients that are utilizing the service are in QuickBooks Enterprise. You have to be using non-posting transactions for the tool to reduce the file size significantly. So you have to be using either sales orders, purchase orders, or estimates, or all three of those. And we want to make sure that it's, file size is a concern. So if you're in enterprise and your file size is, 100,000 KB, that's well below the gig to gig and a half range. So this is not a service that we would be talking about at that stage just yet, but it is something that we have available. A couple of disqualifiers. So if you're using QuickBooks Online, this tool is not going to work for you. And then, of course, if you're not using non-posting transactions, so you only use, invoices and bills as an example, it's not going to be a good fit. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tool. I do also want to talk about future state. So we've developed this tool initially for internal use. So we're offering a service where we run the tool on our side. But as a future state, we're targeting probably for Q4 of this year. We want to make that tool available for off-the-shelf use by clients. And additionally, with that, any transactions that are deleted with the tool are maintained in the application. So if we've deleted a sales order, of course, that sales order is going to stay in an archive copy of your file, but we also will be able to view that sales order actually within the application itself. So I'm going to go ahead. I've just got a sample company file open that has some sales orders, purchase orders, estimates in it. So I'm just going to launch our tool. We need to have QuickBooks open. And then just like with any other third-party applications, once we have the tool open, we're going to get an application permission box. So I'm just going to say yes whenever my company file is open. And although we're not accessing this data, we're going to go ahead and check that box. You know, sales orders, purchase orders, and estimates do not usually have that information attached to them, but I'm going to go ahead and click continue here. And the first thing that we want to do is sync QuickBooks. So I've already run the sync. It won't take as long to run because I've ran it recently, but with larger files, sometimes the initial sync is taking up to 24 hours to run because of how much data exists in those larger files. We are pulling in all of the non-posting transaction information as well as the list data and the invoices or bills, et cetera, that may be tied to that because of some of the filtering that we need to do in the application. So I'm going to go ahead and run the sync now. And you can select which type of data you want to sync. So if we were only syncing, if we were only going to be removing sales orders, we could select just to sync sales orders and then sales orders. And of course, invoices would be synced along with the list items, which is required, and then of course data type. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue here. And it's just going to tell us which part of the sync it's on. Okay, so we can see that the sync is finished. Our progress bar, that was our progress window that was in the middle of the screen here, is gone. And we can see all of the sales orders that have been synced into the tool. If I click this drop down up here at the top, I can see purchase orders. And then if I click down again, I can see our estimates. So a couple of filtering options that we have available. So first and foremost, transaction date, right? So we've been using the same file for quite some time, since 2008 or even before then, and we've been using sales orders or purchase orders or estimates since that time. We're going to have a lot of data in our file that's going to be very historical in nature. We probably don't need to see that data in our day-to-day file. So when we're talking with clients about what date we want to use here, we think about, how often do you have to go back and look at a sales order that's from last year or the year before? And that's going to vary, client by client. So that's something that we just kind of talk through with them. If we wanted to use, that date filter. Now, sometimes clients might say, well, I'm okay with deleting everything prior to this year, but I might have some, sales orders or estimates or purchase orders that are still open. So I'm going to switch to sales orders here so we can take a look at our filters. So first off, I always put in a very old date to make sure I grab everything. And then I'm going to put in 2023 here. So we can see all of the transactions that we have, and you can sort by these column headers as well. If you just click on them, we can see what our transaction date is, our due date, our reference number, so the number of that PO, or I'm sorry, SO in this case in QuickBooks. If there's a class memo, it gives us a subtotal, total amount, some other fields that are present on that sales order as well, even what template we're using, the sales tax rate. Again, we just have some sample data in here so you can see our sales tax item is test sales tax. Then we can also see if any of those have been fully invoiced or are manually closed. So fully invoiced would mean that we have created an invoice against that sales order in its entirety. So the whole thing has been closed down in QuickBooks. Sometimes, especially as files get larger, we'll see what we kind of call like ghost sales orders where everything's been invoiced against them, but for some reason, even after we manually close them, they're still coming back. So we have that filter available as well if that sales order has been manually closed. We'll see similar fields if we go and look at purchase orders as an example. So vendor name, transaction date, has that purchase order been manually closed, or has it been fully received, meaning we've received a bill or an item receipt against that sales order in its entirety again. And then estimates, again, similar fields, customer, transaction date, some other fields that may be present on that estimate. And then if that estimate is active or not, right, there's that make estimate inactive box that's on estimates. So we can filter on that as well. So again, because this data is in just like a sample file, we're not seeing any, sales orders that have been fully invoiced. I'm going to go ahead and just say, let's see, what do we have here for dates? So if we wanted to remove all of them from, let's just say January of 2023, and so as I'm clicking through and updating, you can see that my app is trying to pull in just that data. And then from here, I can click here and it will let me know how many, or select all of the sales orders that I have. Again, we can also filter on customer. I had a client recently that, they used estimates for some internal project tracking, but that was the only ones that they really needed to see. They had those customers set up in their system with a triple Z at the beginning, I believe, so they'd appear way down in the customer list. So we were able to filter to keep those and remove all of the other ones. So I'm going to select delete selected sales orders, and it's going to let me know it can't be undone. Are we sure? And then we're about to delete 297 sales orders. So I'm going to say yes. And then the tool's going to go through and remove. The amount of time it takes to remove does vary also on client file, or from client to client rather. I've usually seen it deleting around 3,000 transactions per hour, but it does just depend, again, on the size of the file and that kind of thing. So that's why we plan to run the service over the weekend. And then, again, talking about future state, when we make this application available for purchase by clients, we, recommend that they run it over a weekend as well, probably, so that, it doesn't impact any other users that may be working in the file on a day-to-day basis. When this application is made available for off-the-shelf as well, there will be user login rights also. So within the application itself, obviously you've got to have access to QuickBooks. You need to be logged in as admin the first time to allow the application to talk to QuickBooks. But then at that point, as long as that user has rights to the transactions that they may be deleting, they should be able to be logged in as their individual user, but then we'll also have a login within the application itself. So I can see here that I get a status bar of what, if those sales orders were deleted, how many were deleted. So once those sales orders have been deleted, again, we can see our progress bar is done. We now only see transactions from February and onward. So if I wanted to view those transactions within the application that were removed, I can click on transaction history. And then I can see all of the ones that were deleted. If I want to click on an individual sales order, I can see over here on the right an actual picture of that sales order. So if I wanted to print a copy of it for some reason, I would be able to do that, even though this particular sales order, number 1758, does not exist in QuickBooks anymore. Close out my transaction history here. So let me remove one more because I think I missed showing one of our pop-ups in here. So 3, 5. Let's do 3. Okay, so if I'm just going to remove one more so I can talk about the additional pop-up that came up. So I'm going to say delete selected sales orders. So this next step screen here that we've built into the application is because of the audit trail that exists in QuickBooks Enterprise, so and QuickBooks Desktop products overall. So whenever we remove a transaction, add a transaction, modify a transaction, etc., that triggers an entry on our audit trail. So we have an option to also within QuickBooks, we can come back into QuickBooks and we can choose the Condense Data button. So I'm going to just show that real quick here. So if I say Utilities and Condense Data, I didn't remove enough data to make any impact on that audit trail just yet because it was just about 300 sales orders that we removed. But if I had, I would see an option here where if I was to remove the audit trail, it would reduce the company file size so that, you know, we would be able to further reduce our overall file size. The audit trail does take up quite a bit of space in files, especially when we get into larger files, because again, when that transaction's entered, every time it's modified or touched or deleted, it makes an entry on our audit trail. So that audit trail can end up being very lengthy. If anybody's ever gone and looked at the audit trail report, they know what I'm talking about. So we're able to, after that service is completed, we do go ahead and wipe the audit trail as well. Okay, so I did want to show just some examples of some of the deletion service outputs that we've had. So we had a client that came to us, they were using sales orders, purchase orders, and estimates. Their original file size was 4.25 gigs, so very large. The total quantity of transactions that we removed across all those types was just over 152,000, which equated to about 850,000 lines of data in QuickBooks. And the new file size, once that service was completed, was 1.5 gigs. So we can see here for another client, right, their file size started at 1.82 gigs, ending was 1.27. They also had quite a few transactions, but they only had sales orders and purchase orders. This one also, I believe they had already run the audit trail removal on their side first before we looked and took that snapshot of what their file size was. And then this final client, again, they had sales orders and purchase orders. Not a ton, right? I guess that is kind of a lot, but 38,000. And then their beginning file size was 1.44 gigs, and we got it down to under 1. So you can definitely see how that's going to impact them in the long run, right? Their file is going to run a lot faster, reports are going to run faster, users are going to have a better experience, and all that fun stuff. If you have any questions about this service or would like to set up a consult to discuss it, please just go ahead and send in a question and we will make sure that we get back to you. Thank you so much.